Okay, the key case of Hong Kong Fur Shipping and Kawasaki Kisen Kaisha. Now, we come across the idea that sometimes conditions and warranties led to unjust outcomes because parties were able to wriggle out of inconvenient contracts on the basis of technical breaches when actually the goods were still perfectly usable. And so the court addressed this by inventing a new kind of contract term. In the case of Hong Kong Fur Shipping and Kawasaki Kisen Kaisha, a ship was to be leased or rented out for 2 years, and one of the contract terms was that the ship was going to be seaworthy. I guess you'd kind of hope that that would be a term of the contract. Now, the ship wasn't seaworthy, it needed a number of repairs, and from the 2 year charter, it was needed 20 weeks worth of repairs. So that's roughly 10%, 20 weeks, 20%, 20 weeks out of 104. And the charterers, the people hiring the ship, sent it back. They said, we don't want it anymore. This is a breach of a term, and it's a breach of a condition because it must be a condition that the ship is seaworthy. That's pretty important to the whole contract, and so that allows us to repudiate. Now, the House of Lords said, actually, no. Being seaworthy is an unusual kind of term because it's a term that can be broken in all sorts of ways. It could be a very serious breach, so maybe the ship's about to sink, it's got a darn great big hole on the side, or maybe it's a really trivial breach, it's got 80 rather than 90 fire extinguishers on board. And so a term that can be broken in all sorts of ways doesn't really fit conditions and warranties. So they invented a new kind of term, and that was what we call innominate. And innominate, think of it as being a no-name term, a term that's not yet been fully labelled. Innominate terms are those that could be broken in a number of different ways. And so whether the breach of an innominate term is repudiatory depends on the consequences of breach. So how much have you lost the main purpose of the contract? Or the term that the expression they used in that case was, are they deprived of substantially the whole benefit of the contract? Now, if that test is satisfied, yes, they are deprived of substantially the whole benefit of the contract, then the other side's entitled to repudiate, to end the contract. If not, they're only entitled to damages. And the court in Hong Kong Fur Shipping said, okay, so you've lost 20 weeks, that's 20% of the whole contract. That's not substantially the whole benefit, therefore you're not entitled to repudiate. This would be a non-repudiatory breach, or equivalent to an old breach of a warranty. Now, they already had repudiated, the charterers had sent the ship back, so that meant that they had wrongfully repudiated the contract, and the people who owned the ship, who had sent out the ship to the charter in poor state, themselves had the right to sue. They could sue the charterers for wrongful termination of contract. And so what the case of Hong Kong Fur Shipping, Kawasaki Kisen Kaisha tells us, one, it introduced this new kind of contract term, an innominate contract term, and it gives us an example of when a breach of an innominate term won't be repudiatory, when in that case they lost 20% of the contract benefit, and they said that's not the whole benefit, you're not entitled to end the contract.